and there's always some kind of a justification for them, but we still suffer morally and spiritually from them. And we need to do something to cleanse ourselves and to recognize that we have to make a correction in our behavior as a race and as a civilization, and that is to rid ourselves of the abortion plague. We personalize that feeling from an abortion plague, which is caused, as I mentioned, by the invasion and the captivity, and shipped over here to North America and South America, and colonization. All that creates the condition that us as former slaves and slaves wanted to avoid, and we saw death as just a natural way to avoid that horrible condition. And so we choose to kill our children so that they could avoid it. We choose to murder, and we use all sorts of rationales for it. Even today, as I mentioned before, we're continuing on with these abortions. Remember that the birth control pill does not stop fertilization. You still become pregnant. You'll basically have an abortion every month when you take the birth control pill. And this, of course, weakens your immune system and weakens the natural growth and development of your glandular system, which causes an increase in cancer of the reproductive system. The men participate in abortions because half the abortions are caused by men. They are either silent witness or they're actively involved. They start doing that by just indiscriminately killing their sperm through masturbation and lustful sex. And they excuse that behavior, and that progresses to the conception of a child, which they use the same alibi system to excuse. And then we sit back and we feel the failure in that we are not complete as a human being because we failed to birth a child, which we use a rationale that because the relationship was going to fail, so therefore we should kill the child. And we use our bad habits. We say, well, we have a bad habit in choosing a mate, and this mate is not good for a marriage, and therefore I have a good reason to kill a child, so I can continue on with my sex lust behavior and not feel guilty. Sometimes the murder is justified by petty rape, and that a lady goes on a date and it's assumed that she should have sex because the man is taken on a date and she's subjected to rape, which we call petty rape. And so conception of a child occurs under that situation. And then the person feels as though the reason why they have subjected themselves to abortion is because they lack the spiritual growth and they're not a good quality person. They feel they'll never go to heaven because of this abominable crime that they have committed, even with the consent of the male or without his consent. The crime is committed because it's caused by the social conditions created by the Europeans to cause us to kill our children. And this, by definition, is called a form of genocide. Yes, I'm calling rape a form of genocide and abortions another form of genocide. It leads us to our own destruction. And the abortion makes you feel guilty. It makes you feel unloved, and then you start crying. We have these emotional ways of crying, which a symptom of that is cold, where your nose is running, your eyes is watering. That is internal crying that's coming out and it's being expressed by cold. And so we medicate ourselves with sex to kind of buffer the pain of going through that abortion. And the fact that we know that we killed a baby, we can control the death, but we cannot control our sexual behavior, so it becomes a trade-off. It becomes a way in which we punish ourselves. We like violence. We like to see violence because this helps us punish ourselves for the violence we did to this unborn child. We like lustful sex instead of parenting, so we like lustful sex videos and movies and nothing that associates with parenting, because parenting would cause that guilt and that internal torture to rise up to the surface. We're lustful and we're misguided, and we have misguided relationships, so we like misguided relationships and lustful kind of activities. We like the soap operas because that supports our defeat of ourselves, and it helps us cover up the pain. And we treat ourselves like we are living abortions. We don't take care of our parenting ourselves and nurturing ourselves, and we don't love ourselves, and we become a living abortion by participating in this abortion plague. We call self and other women, for instance, girl, and girl is a put down. It's like a man calling another man boy. And we use these kind of terms to diminish our feminine principle, our female principle, and women go back to calling each other girl and girlfriend, which is a term that our ancestors, especially my grandmother hated the term girl because she was called a girl up until she was 70 years old. We wanted to be called a woman, so we adopt the language of the slave masters to help torture ourselves because we feel guilty and ugly because of this abortion. We punish ourselves in our relationships for doing abortions. We just feel as though we're not worthy of a moral man or a spiritual man, so we continue getting into these relationships that to help punish us for having abortions. And men do the same thing with ladies. They pick ladies they know they can't bond with properly to punish themselves for participating in abortions. And then we buy, a lot of people buy dolls and put them in their car, and it's a subliminal way of having children and nurturing children to cover up that pain. Some people just want to have a baby to make up for the dead babies that they participated in their assassination and execution of. But that helps that distortion to be, kind of supported, and we don't really associate the parenting and the moral aspects, and we just go away to that sex lust kind of way of living our lives. We associate the bed with sex. So when you say let's go to bed, we mean let's have sex. And we say love means sex. So when we say let's make love, that means let's have sex. And we always divorce ourselves from the child, the fruit of this relationship. And don't think because a man and woman together eventually they will have sex. Does not occur in our civilization, as evidenced by the studies done with the Twa people. The Twa man and woman who had children, the older girls would sleep to the left of the mother, and the rest of the children would sleep to the right of the father, and they would all sleep naked, skin to skin. Just having skin-to-skin contact is not associated with sex or sleep. Sleep is sleep. Going to bed is going to bed. But we are mixing definitions so we can cover up this overwhelming subliminal pain that we carry from aborting our grandmothers and grandfathers and our sisters and brothers and those warriors we need to continue the liberation of our race. We carry this secret ugliness, and what we need to do is release this pain. Release the pain of murdering our ancestors, our brothers and sisters, and killing part of ourselves. Because when you kill the fetus, you kill part of yourself, which means you hate part of yourself. So we have to release that pain. We have to release the fact that we're angry with ourselves for not living up to responsibility of being an African person. And this leads to all kinds of diseases. We make our sex organs ill by abortions and masturbation and lustful sex. We hold the pain and anger and negativity in our reproductive system, which leads to fibroid tumors, pelvic inflammatory disease, prostate disease, because we see ourselves as an executioner with another name. So we hate ourselves for that because we hate part of ourselves. So we go into a thing where we need punishment. We need to punish ourselves with bad relationships. We need to cover up the hurt. We need to cover up the fact that we have been a failure at the full circle of love, loving your mate, loving each other, and loving the child, which is the fruit of that relationship. So I want to introduce ways in which we can cleanse ourselves, forgive ourselves for participating in this plague in our lives. And we can do that with a ritual. Now, I'm going to show you some of the things we can use in that ritual. Now, what we're going to do is perform a ritual. We need to use African artifacts, fertility dolls, and statues. And we're going to prepare a table, and we're going to use a spiritual color for the table, either blue tablecloth or white tablecloth, and we're going to use a fertility doll, a Madonna and Child, some African artifact that represents fertility, because we want to give birth to the spirit and give rebirth to the spirit in the unseen world, to return the spirit back home. We want to use the African artifacts because they symbolize the spirit of those ancestors, those unborn ancestors, those aborted ancestors that we have, as a race, participated in the plague of abortion by killing So we're going to prepare the table and use these artifacts and masks to symbolize our connection with our ancestors. As I said, we're going to prepare a table. We can use a mat, a straw mat. We can use a tablecloth that can be blue or white or any sort of African design, a kente cloth. We want to use flowers that represent the tree of life, represents the rebirth. We can use herbs. This is eucalyptus. We want to represent the medical, the healing property, the healing aspect, that we're healing ourselves of this plague. So we're using herbs. We can use flowers. We can use other plants to represent the tree of life. We're going to prepare our ritual. We can perform it on the floor. We can also use candles to represent that we're going to give rebirth to the spirit of Ma'at, rebirth to Kuchichakalia, Kumba, Nia, Imani. We're using fruit to symbolize regeneration of our spirit. We're giving birth to the tree of Ma'at so it can return back again to the spirit world, because that aborted child a place was made for it here and you took it away by abortion. So we have to prepare the child to go back on its journey back home so it may come again and be welcome and not aborted. And we're going to use a cup to pour a libation in honor of the spirit. We may have to name each one of the abortions because we want to make this personal. We want to incorporate that spirit back in us so we can release it and release it back to the unseen world, the heavens, in hopes that it can return again. Because we're recognizing that spirit as our uncle, our grandmother, our brother and sister or warrior. Now, all of us were born by teenage parents during slavery, so teen pregnancy is not a justification for the murder. We have to understand that teen pregnancies are pushed by the industry, which pushes hypersexuality so they can make money. The aborted fetus is used by the organ harvest industry. They sell the skin, they sell the organs to rebuild organs and tissue for white people. That's part of the organ harvest industry. So money is made off of our destruction. And they're pushing this, and they're pushing abortions on us. And they're using the teens, the boys, parents, and the girl parents to be father and to have children so that they can be feeders for the prison system, which is a business, and the welfare business, and the clothing business, because we buy a lot of clothes to cover up the pain, and we take drugs to cover up the pain. And that pain is expressing our inability to bond and to understand ourselves, to understand words, and we bring confusion into the school when we fuel special education industry. We have always had special education, which is a miseducation, as Carter G. Woodson had documented. But we want to perform this ritual, so we may dress in white or blue, and we can hold the ankh in our hands, in our left hand, to symbolize the cleansing of the spirit. And we forgive ourselves, we forgive our ancestors and village and race, and we're going to use the plant in the ritual to symbolize rebirth and regeneration. Again, we're going to return the spirit back to the spirit world, so we have to name the abortion, or we can just simply call it my first abortion, or call it Nia, or call it Ta, or call it Tamari, or call it Hatshepsut, names of endurance, name of respect, because we do not know the name in which God has given the spirit, but we recognize it as a human being and recognize the spirit that we have betrayed. So we're going to pour libations to honor that. We may want to burn some frankincense and myrrh to purify the air, to purify the journey and purify the ceremony. We may want to beat the drum so that the spirit can dance back to the ancestral world. But what we want to do is acknowledge that we're ridding our race and ridding our personal self of this disease known as the abortion plague. We start the ritual with a prayer, and we honor our ancestors, those not yet born, those whose journey here has been derailed or defrauded, and we honor the fact that we have in some way betrayed the trust that was given to us by God, and we forgive ourselves, and we forgive the unborn fetus for having this pain subjected to it, to the child. And so therefore we have the ceremony, we pour the libation, we hold the ankh, and we stand in a circle, or we stand before the table, or if we're using a table, if we're using the floor. And this ceremony is participated in by men, of course, and women. We open it with a prayer. We honor the fetus. We give the fetus a name. And we ask that we're cleansed of the pain, the anger, the hurt, the frustration, the betrayal. And we welcome the spirit back into this world to come again. And we welcome the spirit in open arms. And we may be the vehicle for that spirit to come back to this world. We may be the birthing parent, and we may not. But we welcome the spirit to return again. And we offer love of the African village and African community.